So yeah, let's do this. Hi YouTube, this is content for you. Ignore the fact that I'm making it on Twitch, don't worry about it. We're going to do a tier list of the any % runs. I should probably get rid of my... Oh, I got rid of my splits. We're going to do a tier list of the any % runs for the Yakuza games. Ruling being any % on whatever is the default difficulty for runs. So for most Yakuzas, that's obviously easy. Or for OG 1 and 2, that's normal. This is going to be... My structure is going to be factoring in a couple of things, like obviously like technical level, glitches and stuff, what it's like to watch as a spectator, and of course the more important thing is this is all my opinion. There's going to be other Yakuza runners who definitely disagree with some of my placements on this list. There's going to be some things that people definitely agree with. So we're just gonna do this. We're just gonna tier list what I feel are the best Yakuza runs, and we're gonna start with, very easily, the easiest one on this list. Get into the lowest possible tier. Don't speak to me or my kids ever again. Fist of the North Star is a terrible speedrun. I could rant about this for 30 minutes. I'm gonna try not to. Fist of the North Star is a terrible speedrun. Casually, the game is like a 7 out of 10. It's RGG's probably worst game. It's not a bad game, but as a speedrun, oh, it's terrible. There's no glitches that make it go faster. And in the speedrun, everything is so slow. Because the big problems I have with Fist of the North Star is there's fast travel in the Wasteland, but you don't go to that many places in the Wasteland in the actual story, apart from the most Eregus bit, which I'll talk about in a second. But in the main city itself, there's no taxi points. And Kenshiro has a very big weakness. Stairs. If ever you play Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise, and you try and go upstairs, for example, you'll see that Kenshiro obviously slows down. Kenshiro slows down. He sucks. Stairs make you go very, very slowly. They make enemies catch up to you. Oh, it's terrible. Oh, it's terrible. It's awful. But also, the actual flow of the run itself is not that great. There's way too much downtime. A lot of the runs from around that period, 5-0-ish in Fist of the North Star, they all go a bit quiet in the mid-game. Fist of the North Star goes a bit quiet in the first third of the game till the end of the game. But, despite crapping on Fist of the North Star, I will give Fist of the North Star a little bit of praise. Some of the fights in Fist of the North Star speedrun are very, very good. The boss fights particularly, and by the end of the speedrun, you are about 20 levels behind. It is a hard speedrun. And honestly, that does make it kind of decent. But then you get the finale that's like 20 minutes long and it sucks. That finale set piece is one of the longest set pieces in any RGG game, and it's not well designed because you run along the same pipe like 5 times. It's very samey and it just throws harder and harder enemies at you, which is actually a boon in a certain speedrun we'll talk about in a bit. But for Fist of the North Star, it's bad. It's not designed well. And here's the thing that really puts Fist of the North Star in bottom tier for me. There is one part, 3 chapters before the end. You start at part A. You get told to go to point B. You go to point B, and you get told to make it nighttime. So you go back to point A, make it nighttime. Back to point B. You get told you've got to go out into the wasteland and go find the specific person. So you go to point C, which is back in the car. You get in the car, you go to the wasteland. We call this point D, which is where you have to go to. You get there, and you find the way is blocked with rocks. Go back to point C. Talk to Bat, who says, I can upgrade your car. Back to point D, where you have to get all of the upgrades in that bit. Yes, they have a slight better spawn rate at that point, which I will give it slight credit for. You go and you farm up all of those items that you need. You go back to point C to talk to Bat and get the upgrade. You go back to point D and break through those rocks. You go in there to point E, where you get to the NPC, who tells you to go and listen to the people of the city, which is back at point A. It takes like 15 fucking minutes. It is padding for padding's sake. And I love RGG's games, but that part right there is the worst part of any RGG game ever. It is padding for the sake of padding. I would respect Fist of the North Star a lot more if it didn't waffle, if it didn't pad, and it just knew when to stop. And that is also in the speedrun, except it's worse in the speedrun because of all the fight spawns that you can't deal with at all. I like Fist of the North Star. Look forward to me doing Fist of the North Star any percent, and potentially all sub-stories by the end of this month. Because I owe that. It sucks. It sucks. So, Black Panther 1 and 2. I'm going to have to shove these in the haven't done list yet. As I have said multiple times, I do have physically Black Panther 1 and Black Panther 2. I bought these on release. They still work. My problem is that my PSP is a PSP 1000, so I can't capture from it. I would quite like to get a PSP 2000 or 3000 that has component out. I could do Black Panther 1 obviously on emulator. I could do Black Panther 2 technically on emulator, the PSTV, but I kind of want to do them on official hardware, even though PSTV would probably be the fastest way. But the trouble with, if I could do both of them on PSTV, I'd do it that way. But the problem is, Black Panther 1 isn't available digitally. Only Black Panther 2 is. So, I'm currently deciding if I want to do that, but this year, I can guarantee you, because they're the last two runs that I haven't done of the Yakuza series yet, this year, I guarantee you, we will be speedrunning Black Panther 1 and 2. In some way, shape, or form, I guarantee it. I just have to get the method that I would like to be able to do it. So, let's get on to the spicy stuff. Yakuza 0. If you asked me, this one's going to be that first controversial one. Remember, this is the Speedrun Tierlist, not how I feel about the games casually. Casually, 0's an S. Casually, 0's all the way up here. 0's good shit. If you'd have asked me about a year ago, 0's Speedrun would be B tier, maybe A tier. But right now, it's a C tier. Right now, 0's route, it got pretty majorly reworked. And for the vast majority of the run now, you buy shotguns, you use shotguns. Now, that does make a couple of boss fights nicer, which is good. You also get daggers on Majima, which also makes the Colosseum hilariously easier, which I do appreciate. But for the most part, most set pieces are just go stand in the right location, pray enemy RNG is good, and shoot. I don't really like Yakuza 0 Speedrun anymore. And it sucks, because it feels like it's lost a lot of its luster, a lot of what made it good. It's a massive shame. Like, 0 is still... I'll tell you what, I'll put it up to B. Because it's still actually... It's better than Fist of the North Star. It's on a tier above Fist of the North Star. It still has a good couple of, like, bits to it. It obviously has the time skip, the stealth skip. It has good speed tech. Boss fights also have good tech to them as well. Still, but every set piece is now a joke, and it's essentially walking simulator from one point to the next. I will put it above Fist of the North Star because it has way more going for it than Fist of the North Star does. I will admit that. I think the C tier was a bit too much. But 0's run has just gotten so passive, and it doesn't feel good to play, and it doesn't feel good to watch, in my opinion. Others may think differently. I haven't done that many runs of 0 recently. The last time I did a run of 0 was... that's not... For some reason, Steam says December 3rd. That's not right. The last time I did a run of 0 was 7 months ago. That's the reason. I also burnt myself out on 0 runs pre-partnership on Twitch, which was like 2 years ago at this point. But, like, I burnt out on 0 a long time ago. So, now, these two are gonna be a bit rough to grade. I'm tempted to put them in the haven't done section because I've done like 5 runs of OG1 and I've only done 1 run of OG2, so I feel like I can't give... OG2 is going to go in the haven't done. Despite having done it once, I don't feel like I can give it justice. Because the first time we did OG2 was the night that Judgment had a midnight launch, and we took us an hour to get a run going because we had bad RNG. So I feel like I can't give OG2 a good enough representation right now. So we're not going to do OG2 here. OG1, however, we've done OG1 a little bit. We would have done more runs had my PS3 not started to explode. If you haven't seen, my PS3 for some reason is loading very badly, very erratically. So unfortunately, I can't do OG 1 or 2 runs, or Kenzan or Dead Souls for a while, which does suck. It sucks a lot. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do those for a while. So, OG 1. OG1 is rough in places because it is the original on PS2. It obviously doesn't play as smoothly, not even as smoothly as OG2, but OG1 actually has a good couple of things going for it. One, no get the ring back. That's a big thing. No get the ring back. That's very, very important. It also is actually reasonably quicker in kind of the mid-game, but it also is very different than Kiwami's. We'll talk about Kiwami's a bit more when we get to Kiwami's, but in terms of OG1, there's a good couple of things that differentiate it from the rest. With the OG games, the fight spawns are set fight spawns. They're random whether they turn up or not, but they're always in set places, so you kind of already know if you're good at the game where the fight spawns are. That's nice. Do like that. OG1 also requires the use of gambling. So we go to the gambling hall, and unlike K1 where it doesn't matter, in OG1 the gambling does matter, and the more chips you get, the more weapons you get for the late game. Pretty nice. The fights themselves as well are a good combination, I'd say, of skill. I actually quite like OG1's fights. But OG1 is rough around the edges. Also, it must be said, OG1 does have a very good glitch and out of bounds where one boss jumps themselves out of bounds. And it's the Akai brothers of all things. So that's kind of nice. Admittedly, that is actually kind of nice. I'm going to objectively, even though I've only done like 5 runs of it, put OG Yakuza 1 in the B tier ahead of 0. Ahead of 0. Thank you. I think that OG1 is actually a pretty decent run. I actually quite enjoy it. I want to do more runs of it, but unfortunately at the minute, I can't. PS3 is broke. So, I don't know why there's 2 versions of 3, 4, and 5. They're all the same. We're going to go with Yakuza 3. Yakuza 3 is currently undergoing a few route changes. So, this is based on the last time I did the route, which was a couple of months ago. Yakuza 3 and 4 have undergone what I will call batrification, because the bat stands for baseball bat. Yakuza 3's route is currently going for a baseball batting. Some parts are going to be a lot faster, so baseball bats are in. Now, with Yakuza 3, Yakuza 3 has unfortunate bits of downtime, and unfortunately for Yakuza 3, it has something far more erroneous: Ricky Mask. Ricky Mask RNG is a fuck. I hate that man. I hate that man with a passion. I can't count the amount of runs he's killed. So, Yakuza 3 speedrun basically comes down to 2 parts. The first 2/3 of the run are very actually skill-based. There's a little bit of a infinite combo you can do. Enemies can get out of said infinite combo, but the infinite combo basically is actually kind of timing based on certain bosses. It's actually kind of skill based, and I quite like that. The last third of Yakuza 3's run, you need a math PhD to finish, because you get guns, 13 of them, and you also need to make sure that you save enough ammo for the finale. Tap actually routed all of that out. It's very precise, it's very cool, and it's much better than the gambling in Yakuza 4, so it has that going for it. But Yakuza 3, in terms of the speedrun, has 2 little bits of very big downtime. It's the exact same downtime that you would expect from casually. So it's kind of chapter 4, it's kind of chapter 10. It's all the orphanage stuff. And again, chapter 10 also has Ricky Mask, so yeah. So, Yakuza 3 for me sits in the B tier. Yakuza 3 for me definitely sits in the B tier. I think I like Zero's a bit more, but it's close. I actually quite like Yakuza 3's run. Actually, no, I think I put Yakuza 3 higher than Yakuza 0. We'll see what happens with the new route change, but I think the Yakuza 3's run is actually quite solid. It's almost, actually, I think I put it above Yakuza 1's. I think it's close to teetering on an A. I think it's very, very close to teetering on an A rank. I think the Yakuza 3 is a good run. One of the runs that has undergone a couple of changes in this last year. We asked for a method to skip the 50-50 bet, and the monkey paw curled and said, "Ye get baseball bats." And then again, we asked for the nice long walk and talk to be skipped, and once again the monkey paw curled, because that's our only breakpoint, but it is skippable. But the downside is, the only version that it actually works on is the PC version, which is actually the worst version to run in pretty much 95% of all the chapters in the video game. But because this 3.5 to 4 minute long walk and talk is skippable in the PC version, the PC version becomes the better version to run, despite the fact that it's actually the worst version to run. Ooh, it makes me tingly, and I don't like it. So, Yakuza 4 is the first speedrun that went through the batrification where we changed everything to baseball bats. That makes the run go way faster. It's also, the bats can be a little frustrating. The bats can be very, very frustrating. Bats in Yakuza 4... I don't know, bats in Yakuza 4 are frustrating. Like, you can have very good set pieces with bats, or you can lose a minute to Nakano Watari. Speaking from experience here. They do make the run a lot faster, though, which is nice. So, the current iteration, I am basing it on the PC version. I am basing it on the PC version. It is going in the B tier. Because the thing is, the bat route is good. It does lose a little bit with some of its characters, but you still get to play as every character. So you've got the different characters to learn the route with. You also have some of the best, coolest boss fights in the run. Again, Saijima's first 2 chapters are pure Saijima gameplay, and you get that Kiryu boss fight. It's fucking phenomenal. Even in the speedrun, you have to do that fight pristinely, or you lose an insane amount of time, which I haven't been doing very well lately with. But I really like Yakuza 4's run. It's very varied. It's very cool in that it allows you to do a couple of things. But if the PC version wasn't currently the best version to rate, I would probably put it in the A tier. Also, the 50-50 might be coming back. Not 100% certain yet. The 50-50 might come back. We'll see. We will see. It's tight. It's very tight. This one's going to be controversial. This one is going to be very controversial. Yakuza 5 speedrun suffers from being one of the best speedruns and one of the worst speedruns. It is the longest out of all of the Yakuza speedruns. But it also has the most downtime. There is about 45 minutes of running from point A to point B in a row with nothing fucking happening. Saijima's early part is a mixture of good fun, because you get to play as Saijima, and also, dear God, why is there 2 dream sequences? Why are you doing this? Please, why? It doesn't make any sense. Even casually, it doesn't make any sense. Narrow it down to 1, for God's sake, and then you have an entire chapter dedicated to the hunting, which I kind of like casually, but in the speedrun, it's just, please, maul Okudera, Mr. Bear. That's the only thing you can hope for in terms of speed in that chapter. And then chapter 4 of Saijima's is the most painful chapter in the entire run, because for some reason Nagoya has the most insane fight spawns in the entire game. You can have up to 6 or 7 fight spawns on one street corner that you have to pass. And because it's an older game, if the fight spawns aren't close enough to you, they don't get despawned when you come out of the fight, therefore you get into more fight spawns. I love Yakuza 5 to bits, but the bad part of Yakuza 5 is really bad. However, when you get to play Yakuza 5, god damn, that's a fun run. God damn, that's one of the best runs. You have a lot of different things. You have a damn near infinite with Kiryu, provided you can pull it off, and that requires skill. You need good timing on that. You need to learn how to do that. You get to play with every character other than Haruka, whose gameplay you completely skip. Oops. And you have some really cool speed tech. You have what we call text box buffering. So in regards to Akiyama's part, you stack a text box and make it so that you can essentially walk through a wall that shouldn't be there. You get to skip in the finale the long, almost 2 minute long conversation where the enemy can damage you, but you can't damage the enemy, and you have to wait for Shinada and Saijima to finish talking before you can move on. You get to skip all of that. The skips that you get in Yakuza 5 are beautiful. They save a long time. And the gameplay itself is fantastic. Might surprise you, but Shinada is probably one of the best playing characters in the speedrun. He's fantastic. They all are. Like, the combat in Yakuza 5 is probably, in my opinion, of the old engine, the best combat you can get. The downside is how much downtime Yakuza 5 has. Even in the speedrun, Yakuza 5 has a lot of downtime. And it's that downtime that stops me putting it at an S tier. But it goes in the A tier. I sound crazy putting it in the A tier after all of that. But Yakuza 5 speedrun is fantastic. It is really good. The downside is it's long and has too much downtime. Everything else about Yakuza 5 speedrun, absolutely phenomenal. Yakuza 5 has a very good speedrun. It is very, very good. I love it to bits. It is very good. But it is 6 hours long. And you do skip a lot of gameplay with some of the characters in the middle. But the actual speed tech that you get, the fights that you get, and the things that you do in the run are all fantastic. Like, it's a very, very good run with very little blocks and anything like that. Yakuza 6. I might get some stick for this. Yakuza 6 is going in the S tier. Yakuza 6 used to be my favorite Yakuza run for a long time. Yakuza 6 is a very, very fast-paced, nasty run at times. Yakuza 6 is a very masochistic run. Now, my problems with Yakuza 6 stem from the fact that I can't get the PC version working properly. That's my problem. If I roll back my version, I can get a version of Yakuza 6 that works perfectly and pristinely. So my thoughts on this aren't, not considering the PC problems I'm having with it, because they're very much centered around me. Yakuza 6 as a speedrun is masochistic as fuck. With Yakuza 6, the system that you get is every single one of your stats starts at base 100. In Yakuza 6, we get 2 items that raise our attack past the soft cap of 200, but decrease our defense by half down to 50, which is an exponential difference, and we don't substitute for that. By the time you get to the end game, even on easy, you can start dying in about 3 hits from bosses. It's fantastic. Yakuza 6 is not without its problems, though. Yakuza 6 had God's taxi RNG. So at some point you have to start resetting for taxis, which is a massive pain in the ass, as Piers Calla can tell you. Yakuza 6, other than that, is a fantastic speedrun. Like, there's good tech to it. There's very good tech to it. There's a lot of... Because of the way that drinks work in Yakuza 6, you're only able to take the drink in your hand. So there's been a lot of routing and maneuvering around having a drink in your hand at the right times to get that attack buff. So Yakuza 6 is a very well routed out run that has good fun fights, a lot of danger to the actual fight itself as well, and has, despite the fact that it's an early Dragon Engine game and is missing a lot of features, really actually good combat in the speedrun. It's one of the only speedruns in the Yakuza games where grabbing an enemy and throwing an enemy is a viable strategy. It is actually very good, and I love it for that. 6 is one of my favorite runs. The reason why I haven't done it lately, again, is because the PC problems I'm having with it, but Yakuza 6 is a fantastic speedrun. And it really is. It's one of my favorites. It's also not too long. It doesn't overstay its welcome, which is really, really good. Really, really good. So I really like Yakuza 6. Objectively speaking, I think Yakuza 6 is actually one of the better speedruns. It's easy to learn, despite the fact of its difficulty, and it's nice and short, especially with the PC version. Like, you also get ragdolls that Beyblade. It's great. Absolutely great. Yes, Rugby Baby also good. Rugby Baby also good. Boy, I have a history with this one. Yakuza Dead Souls, this surprises people a lot, is the very first Yakuza game I speedran. All the way back in, I believe it was 2016, there was an online marathon called Shots Fired. I owe a lot to Shots Fired, because Shots Fired was the first marathon to ever accept me to speedrun at a marathon. And Shots Fired, as you can probably guess, is a marathon dedicated to games that are shooters. Which is the reason why I learned Yakuza Dead Souls. I was always planning to do every Yakuza speedrun, all those years ago. But I wasn't planning to do Dead Souls first. Now, as I said, and this is something to take into consideration, this is basing the run on the Any %. The run that I have done the most with Dead Souls is New Game Plus. I started with New Game Plus because my thought process was, who the hell wants to play Dead Souls for a long time? I just want the laser to kill everything. Move all that aside. We are talking about the Any % for Yakuza Dead Souls. The one that actually has some routing in it. There's actually some interesting bit of tech in Dead Souls, because Dead Souls is a third-person zombie shooter, for those who don't know. A lot of people consider it to be the potential almost death knell of the series in the West, because after Yakuza 4, we got Dead Souls, it didn't sell very well at all, and it took 3 years to get Yakuza 5 out the door, which is also down to the fact that Sega Atlas were moving offices, and the sheer localization job that is required for Yakuza 5. If you've all played Yakuza 5, you all know. So Dead Souls has a bad reputation going into it. Dead Souls is very much like Fist of the North Star. It has problems. It has big problems. All the enemies are a bit too spongy and a bit too bullety and a bit too tanky. Again, in the speedrun, it's not too much of a problem, even in the any%, because like with the right weapon upgrades, it's not too bad. And there's actual strategy to Dead Souls. That sounds absurd. There is actual strategy to Dead Souls. With Dead Souls, you actually fire faster when aiming down sights, provided it's not a room that drops your FPS, for example. Like with Akiyama against his final boss, or his only boss, if you're in the aimed mode, then you actually fire way faster with his 2 pistols. There is actually routing that has gone into Dead Souls any%. And again, yes, this is my personal opinion, which is why I might get a little bit of stick for this. It's going in the B tier. It's not going in the C tier, it's going in the B tier. And yes, this is the any%. If this was the New Game Plus, it would go in the C tier. I just want to point that out. Any% for Yakuza Dead Souls actually isn't that bad of a time. It is very much the bottom of B tier. It is very much the very close to going into C tier, but it is a B tier in my opinion. Dead Souls is any%. Dead Souls' speedrun made me appreciate Dead Souls more. Mostly because you don't spend that much time playing it. But there's actual speed tech to Dead Souls in the any% that actually makes it go faster. There's a couple of things that are way too long. Ryuji, go to first chapter. Get that shit out of here. That is terrible. Worst chapter in the game, by far. But there's actually a lot of things in the game that you can make go faster, like with playing well, for example. Like the first boss with Majima, for example, if you do that fight correctly, you can actually skip it throwing the police cars, for example. Like it requires a lot of luck, it requires you hitting the crit spot of the monster perfectly. But my god, it's actually got some tech to it. Like, there's a lot of the fights in Dead Souls that have tech. The Ryuji Octopus boss, for example, has a fair bit of tech to it in any%, because in obviously New Game Plus you just laser the damn thing, but in any%, you have to use the grenades that you're given to you, and if you do it correctly, you can actually end that boss fight really, really fast. Like, there's actual tech to Dead Souls, and I love it. And I know a lot of people don't like Dead Souls, but we're talking about the any% speedrun here. The any% speedrun for Dead Souls is not the best. It's a lot worse than a couple of things, but it's really, really good. I promise it's really good. I know I'm crazy for liking it as much as I do, but I promise you, it's really, really good. Not even sure if I believe this. D-tier for Fist North Star, C for Dead Souls, that actually would probably be a bit more accurate. I'd also maybe shove... Nah, I'm not going to shove Yakuza 4 into it. So, let's do the actual release order first. So let's start with Kenzan. Controversial time again, here we go. Kenzan is the earliest Yakuza game on PS3. It was earlier than Yakuza 3. It's probably aged the worst out of all Yakuza games, even OG1. And Kenzan has weird ragdolls. Kenzan started off with these weird-ass ragdolls. It was out of nowhere. Like, it's so good in a lot of ways. I love Kenzan, and I love its run. Kenzan has a very straightforward run. It has a couple of things that are somewhat problematic and would be better. You can't fast travel in the top part of the city, for example. If you could fast travel there, it'd be pretty quick as a run. But its actual fast travel system isn't actually too bad. You actually have fast travel to most of the places that you need. As far as glitches go, there's no outright glitches in Kenzan that we're obviously aware of. But with Kenzan being the first of the spin-off samurai games, you actually have quite a bit of uniqueness to it. Like, obviously you start with your normal default sword. We grab a couple of different swords during the run, including a sword that uses your money as currency to do more damage. So you can mess yourself up in Kenzan's run by about the 3/4 point if you've accidentally messed up some fights. So there is also with Kenzan a lot of fights where you do have to actually, like, do well at those fights. It does suffer from the problem of having too few cutscenes to be able to skip, and it also has a little bit of downtime in the mid game. I love Kenzan. I love its speedrun, which this might be controversial. Kenzan's going in the A tier. Kenzan is a good speedrun. I really like Kenzan. There's actually a lot to it. There's actually a lot to the run and a lot to learn from it, and it's honestly good fun. I don't want to use the word arcadey because it's not arcadey, but it's such a fun run to actually do. Like, your level up system is completely different. You don't get orbs or anything like that. When you level up, you get different parameters like HP, attack, or speed. Like, there's actual speed tech. We found out, bizarrely, if you put your sword away, you start sprinting like a madman. It's the first Yakuza game with sprint. There's actual speed tech later on to, like, skipping certain parts by getting the explosives at the right time, etc. Like, there's good tech in Kenzan, and it's good fun. The speedrun is very, very good. I like it a lot. I like it a hell of a lot. Again, it's my personal opinion. It's the speedrun any percents. I honestly like it a lot. Which is why it hurts to put Ishin in the B tier. I think I would put it here. I don't know which side of OG1 I'd put it. I think, because I've done it a bit more, I'd put it just this side of OG1, but I think in the future I'd put it on the other side. Ishin, much like Kenzan, is very, very unique in, obviously, the Samurai spin-off games. With Ishin, we don't change swords as much as Kenzan, but with Ishin, we still do a lot of upgrades, and that's a lot of the run. I still feel, I've said this a couple of times, I still feel that Ishin's run can be probably updated a bit and made a bit faster, but Ishin, as I've said earlier, suffers massively from the fact that it has a very weak mid-game. It just goes missing, just like Zero. Like, the rest of it is fantastic, and again, the boss fights in Ishin are phenomenal. They are superb. When Ishin really gets going, it's so strong in its speedrun. But a lot of the speedrun, for having 4 different styles, and again, Zero kind of suffers from this as well, you don't really use them that much. Like, you use your sword style mostly, and that's it. Like, sword style is so broken, much like, obviously, Breaker and Beast in Zero are broken, that why would you use anything else? Why would you use anything else? It's a shame. It's a genuine shame. And honestly, Ishin's set pieces are some of the best, and I think some of his boss fights are some of the best as well. The final boss fight of Ishin is probably, we had this conversation earlier, it's probably up there in terms of, like, one of my favorite boss fights, even in the speedrun. Like, it's got fantastic music, it's got multi-tiers to it, it's really good. Like, the actual gameplay changes every single phase, same with Shibasara in Zero, for example. Like, it's an example of a very, very strong endgame. But it's just everything in the middle that hurts Ishin. There's so much downtime. And in terms of, like, an actual run, there's just not as much to it as there is with other runs. And despite this, I still favour it a bit more than Zero's. I do think in the bottom of my mind, I do think Zero is a better speedrun than Ishin, but the shotgun stuff just clouds my judgment at this point. But Ishin has some very memorable moments in the speedrun as well. There's a lot of really hard fights and a lot of really cool fights as well, but it just doesn't have the kind of tech that, say, Yakuza 5 or Yakuza 6 has, so I can't put it higher than a B. I just like Kenzan way more. I think Kenzan does more with it in less time, despite being a newer game. In terms of the speedrun, I think that Kenzan is just better than Ishin, which is a shame, because Ishin's speedrun is not necessarily bad. It's just not as good. And again, when I do more runs of this, my opinion could change. The downtime in Ishin could make me not like it as much as, say, Zero, because I still feel like Zero has good speed tech, but I just feel like Ishin's speedrun is way more fun than Zero's currently. So that's the reason why I put Ishin here in the B tier. Again, let's get these in order. Now, before we start talking about Yakuza Kiwami, I would like to admit that my judgment is a bit clouded towards Yakuza Kiwami. I'll try and be as fair and absolute as I can here, because Kiwami, on a good day, Kiwami is A tier. On a bad day, Kiwami is C tier. Kiwami is... Oh, it's a pain. Kiwami as a speedrun is one of the few runs that constantly makes use of what we consider a glitch. You basically do this, you get a max crush, which is a charge throw for Beast. And for some reason, that gives your next heat attack, provided you do nothing in between, up to 3 times extra damage. It's really, really weird. Like, again, content for YouTube. Say hello to my lots. Kuko, thank you for the Prime Gaming, I appreciate it. Kiwami is a very technical run. But Kiwami is also very frustrating because of that. A lot of the frustration from the past few years has gone, thankfully, with new strats. But Kiwami requires you to have as much HP as possible at certain parts. A lot of Kiwami's damage that you get comes from the Majima fight at the start of the run. You have to beat the Majima fight and you get 100 levels of experience. That fight can be very frustrating for a nerd player. It's not actually that bad when you learn what to do. But Majima's fight kind of is like a really apt description for Kiwami's fight, in that sometimes the Majima fight just doesn't play along. And it's the same with Kiwami. Kiwami has a lot of really cool things going for it. The max crush damage glitch is actually fantastic. There's not that many Yakuza runs that you can say, hey, I'm going to one-shot Shimano with a knife. Like, Kiwami has some really, really cool things going for it. And Kiwami has some really frustrating things going for it. Kiwami might get some stick for this. Kiwami's going in the A tier. As much as I hate Kiwami, a lot of my hatred for Kiwami right now is for personal reasons and leaderboard reasons with all the shit. It should be mentioned that Kiwami, when played at above 60 FPS, likes to break. The boss's Kiwamis, aka their HP regens, sometimes just stop. Kiwami is a broken run, both in terms of good things and in terms of bad things. Kiwami is frustrating. Kiwami is very frustrating to do, and it's also very fun to do when it wants to be. And just going off of Kiwami's strengths, I have to say, Kiwami gets an A, based on its strengths. It should probably be in the B tier. This Kiwami is very much very bottom of A, close to B tier. I was tempted to make a tier in between and just call it Kiwami. But Kiwami is very, very close to straddling the line. On its day, I think that Kiwami is a very good run. But Kiwami is a very, very frustrating run. You have a couple of things like get the ring back, for instance, which shouldn't really be there. We know the reason why Get the Ring Back is in the game. It's because of the PS4's feature of allowing you to play the game before it's fully downloaded. This was confirmed. Like, because of that feature, they had to extend the opening of the game a bit. So they did Get the Ring Back. And in terms of the speedrun, by God is it frustrating to replay that every single time. But once you get past that, Kiwami's run's actually pretty good. Like, objectively, it's actually pretty good. So it's frustrating, but I think on its day, I would put Kiwami in A tier. It's not what I personally feel at the minute, but I do think that Kiwami is a good run. I do think that Kiwami is a good run. PS4 pre-play feature? Yes. Yeah, it's confirmed by Scott Strikeout on his charity stream. So I have the clip somewhere if you'll wanna see it. Let me drop it in. Actually, I can't find it in chat, I don't think. I'll drop it after we're done with this. But I have the clip available for it. So, let's get this one out of the way. Yakuza Kiwami 2. S tier. Easy peasy. I'd put this above Yakuza 6, I believe. Kiwami 2 is a fantastic speedrun. Kiwami 2 has good speed tech. Kiwami 2 has a very strong speedrun. It is very fast. It has some bad speed tech in having max FOV as well. But K2 is one of the best Yakuza speedruns. Down easy, no argument needed from me. Kiwami 2 is very, very optimized. Exceptionally optimized, where the slightest mistake can cost you a lot of time. K2 is a fantastically... It's always the run that we recommend to any new runners, because one, it's the shortest run, and two, it's just fantastic. If something goes wrong, you can easily rectify it. Like, K2 is a very, very, very good run. Like, It's got its hype moments. It's got very little downtime. It's got the cabaret, obviously, as the break point, but that happens at such a perfect time that you can just easily take that break. Like, it doesn't overstay its welcome, being in the Dragon Engine, every cutscene is skippable. It's great. It's really, really great. Like, I think that K2 is probably one of the best Yakuza speedruns. Like, K2's fight strats, whilst K2 is very much a weapon-based run, you still have a lot of strats involved in those weapon-based speedruns. It's not just equip sword, do strong attack. There's a lot of positioning with that, enemy positioning, weapon durability. There's a lot of thinking that goes into K2's run when you're doing it. K2 is one of those runs that's very, very easy to do, but it's very hard to be massively consistent at. And that's because of obviously how tight K2 is as a run. And it's very good. You have a couple of different little bits of skips here and there as well. You have obviously the drinks that you can store in your inventory, where you have to do the right management of those and the timing on those. I really like K2 as a speedrun. I think that K2 as a speedrun is tip of the top. It's fantastic. It's absolutely great. It's one of the best ones out there, by far. I think it's really good. I love it to bits. I haven't done it that much recently, and I should, but K2's speedrun is great. It really is. There is a couple of problems with the speedrun. If you're running on a Ryzen 7, there is the crash issue, but that's why we have, obviously, the pause in the rules, because obviously that happens to quite a lot of people, unfortunately. Which should put points against it, but again, because of the pause rule, it's not too bad. You know, those who suffer from the crash don't lose any time to it. So it's a little bit of an inconvenience, which should be noted. But in terms of the actual run itself, the actual strats in K2 are very, very good. There's a couple of QTE skips, there's a couple of fight skips, etc. It's really good. I like K2 a lot. It's very simple, but it's very, very deep. Also, you get to shoot Shindo with a gun. Everyone loves that. Last three. Oh, baby. The next two are separate, but also require thinking about together. So, we'll go in its order, and we'll start with OG Judgment. OG Judgment is a long run, much like Yakuza 5. It is one of the longer runs. OG Judgment has a lot of downtime. Again, much like Zero, much like Ishin, it goes missing in the middle of the game. OG Judgment has a lot of erroneous things to it as well. It has 3 time waiting segments in a single chapter. It has a money wall, which actually is a decent thing for a speedrun because we have to work around that. But the time waiting segments are a pain. They're a massive pain. But OG Judgment's combat is phenomenal in the speedrun. Good combat for OG Judgment is very much a required thing for the speedrun, and optimal combat actually sees you juggling enemies a lot. OG Judgment's combat is probably some of the more technical combat of the Dragon Engine. There is a lot that you have to do in fights. This might get me some stick. It's a very low S tier. OG Judgment as a speedrun is very long, so a lot of people will feel like it shouldn't be here. But for me personally, I feel this is one of the more satisfactory speedruns. Like, when you actually do good combat, it feels good. I will admit it should probably be a high A tier due to the fact that it is a long run, it has a lot of downtime, but the actual technicality of the run itself is what just for me puts it into S tier. That and the fact that it actually has a couple of really amazing fights. Again, I'm a sucker for the cane, man, but the final boss fight of Judgment is probably my favourite final fight over any game. And I want to also say that the Any Percent Legend is the hardest run as well, and that factors into my thing, but I can't because we're basing this on the Any Percent Easy runs. So, Judgment for me just has way more going on for it than a lot of the other Yakuza runs. And that's why this is going to hurt a lot of people. Lost Judgment's an A. Lost Judgment is the exact opposite, where it's a very high A rank straddling on an S rank. My opinion of Lost Judgment is going down the more that I actually do the run. There's going to be a lot of people that say, especially like based on my reactions, that these two should be reversed, but there's a lot more that I like in OG Judgment that it does in the speedrun. If this was casual gameplay, I would probably easily reverse them, because Lost Judgment and its combat allows you to do way more way earlier on. Lost Judgment's combat is probably, and I've said this multiple times in runs, quintessentially the best combat in the Dragon engine. Hands down. Brawler combat-wise, Lost Judgment's combat is phenomenal. And it really is. But Lost Judgment speedrun barely makes use of any of that. And this is one of the big reasons why I prefer OG Judgment over Lost Judgment. Lost Judgment's combat for 95% of its run is go into EX mode and hold triangle. I love Lost Judgment. I'm obviously going to be doing the run at AGDQ in a week's time. But even I'm struggling to describe the run when it comes to fights, because it is just do the triangle heat attack on Tiger. In OG Judgment, Tiger is definitely the go-to style because it does way more damage than Crane. But again, in OG Judgment, you juggle enemies to keep them in position. In Lost Judgment, while it's a lot easier to juggle enemies due to the fact you can change styles at any point and not just the apex of your combo, there is a system in place to stop you doing damage when you juggle enemies. So you've lost a lot of the technicality that OG Judgment had, and instead, Tiger for some reason got even stronger. Like, Tiger should have been nerfed, but whilst Crane got the upgrades that it needed, and Snake is a very good style, neither of them hold a candle to Tiger. Tiger is just too strong again. But in terms of Lost Judgment, you only really use Tiger except for the first set piece in the finale, or the second set piece in the finale. Whereas OG Judgment, you're constantly switching between the two styles. Like, you're doing that EX damage, you're doing the juggling. Like, there's way more usage of both styles in OG Judgment, and there's way more depth to the speedrun than Lost Judgments. But Lost Judgment gets very, very high marks because there's no time waiting segments. All the time waiting segments are distance based. There's no money segments. Lost Judgment gets a lot of marks on the fact that Lost Judgment wants you to play the video game. Lost Judgment just says, go play the video game. And in terms of speedrun stuff, that translates to us going very, very fast. It's one of the fastest speedruns. It's a sub 2 hour 30 run. It is absolutely fantastic. But it just doesn't have the depth that OG Judgment has. And that's probably why I shoved Judgment in an S and Lost Judgment in an A. I think they both should probably be an A, but OG Judgment just has just all these little bits that are better than Lost Judgment in terms of the speedrun. And I know that's going to be quite controversial, but I think the OG Judgment speedrun is better than Lost Judgments, with warts and all, with the longer parts, with the time waiting parts. I just think that OG Judgment does a way better job of it than Lost Judgment, which is a shame because, again, the combat in Lost Judgment is fantastic. It's just in the speedrun, not really. Really not really. And it's a shame because everything else in Lost Judgment speedrun is set up to be so good. Like, you've got the fast travel system from Like a Dragon. You've got the skateboard, which is great for getting around anywhere, and also stops fight spawns from aggroing onto you, which is fantastic. Like, the drone to despawn the enemies also works better in Lost Judgment, in that when an enemy sees you, you can still use it, whereas in OG Judgment, you can't. Like, everything outside of the combat for Lost Judgment is better than OG Judgment. But OG Judgment and its speedrun stuff is so much better in a speedrun sense than Lost Judgment. Like, for me personally, because I know people are wondering, casually, gameplay-wise, Lost Judgment, Judgment. Everything else, reverse it. Like, I feel like the story is a bit better in OG Judgment. Let's not get into the Hoshino parts of Lost Judgment, because I'll be here for hours. The music, I feel, is just a bit stronger in Judgments, although I will say I'm very surprised they managed to one-up Penumbra, but they did. I'm very surprised at that. But stuff like I really like, and again, this is getting a bit too casual. This will matter to the all sub-stories. I really like what Judgment did with its world building, and especially its sub-stories, which Lost Judgment just doesn't does. Like, Lost Judgment does the school story stuff, which aren't bad, but you lose out on your sub-stories that way. And it's a massive shame. So it's very close, and I think on any other day these two could change positions, and maybe OG Judgment should be in a very high A tier, but in terms of the speedrun, feel that OG Judgment just does more. And again, all my own opinion, and again, it's not casually, it's all about the speedrun. Which brings us to the last one. I think you all know exactly where I'm putting this one. If I can actually grab the thing. You all know it's going in an S tier. I think I would put it currently as my favorite Yakuza run. Like, everyone kind of knows how much I love this run. It's a decent length. There is no breakpoint. That kind of does put it against it. It's very RNG based because it's a turn-based RPG. But for a turn-based RPG and for a first-time turn-based RPG, Like a Dragon is fantastic. And the speedrun itself is actually really, really good. There's a level of simplicity to Like a Dragon due to the fact that, you know, it is this early JRPG that only has, like, a good couple of systems to it, but not, like, a massive amount of systems to it. That I am worried about when LAD 2 comes out. But in terms of LAD speedrun, we do so much in that speedrun. We have speed tech. We have actual weapon crafting, weapon making, because it's so important to the run. We have a lot of fights that can go multiple different ways. You would think being a turn-based RPG that you would lose a little bit on terms of, like, unique fights and stuff like that, but you really don't. Like, there's a lot of the fights, especially from chapter 12 onwards, where sometimes you have to react to the fight to be able to do it fast. And there's a lot of RNG to it, which in most cases would honestly be a negative to it, but in LAD's case, it actually works quite well. And again, it's a Dragon Engine game. 95% of cutscenes are skippable. It's fantastic. The route for LAD, I think the best summation for LAD's route is Chapter 5, where when you do all of the side stuff to get ready for the rest of the run, and you get the confidence from buying the tarot cards, and then you taxi over to the other gambling hall, which has only just opened up because you got all that confidence for it. Everything in Like a Dragon's route just falls into place, like, just nicely and neatly. And that's the reason why, for me, LAD is one of the better speedruns. Now, it's controversial because obviously it's not an action game like the rest of them. A lot of people dislike turn-based RPGs, and that's fine. Again, this list is my personal opinion. I've grown up with turn-based RPGs. I grew up with the PS1 and PS2 era, so obviously I had a ton of those to play, and some were great and some were not good. But honestly, I love LAD's run. Like, even with all the punishment it gives, I love LAD's run. I think it is very varied. I think it is good. People love watching it. It's an entertaining run despite not being an action game. It's a little more confusing not being an action game as well, to be fair. To give it credit, it is a bit more confusing than watching the action game runs, because you can quite easily keep up with what's going on in terms of the action games. But for me personally, I feel like LAD's speedrun just goes way more into depth than a lot of runs. And yeah, there's a lot of Dragon Engine bias in the top of this tier list, because Dragon Engine speedruns of the Yakuza games are nice. Because pretty much every single game is 95% skippable cutscenes. There's so much replayability thanks to the Dragon Engine because of that. And that's not to say the older engine games are bad, because they're not. Again, I've got Yakuza 5 and bloody Kenzan and Kiwami in my A list, which maybe Kiwami's a bit high. But, like, the older engine games are still good. But in terms of the speedruns, skippable cutscenes are a big boon. A very, very important point. Like, Dragon Engine games can be quite smooth. Some of them can be a little less smooth again. 6 is an OG Dragon Engine game. It's very rough around the edges, but the actual route of Yakuza 6 is fantastic. The actual run of 6 is fantastic. Like, the actual speed tech that it's got and also the fight techniques that it's got are a little more in-depth than most people do in the casual playthroughs, and honestly, Yakuza 6 is a scary run, which is why I like it a lot. But then you've got stuff like Judgment that has some of the best combat in the Dragon Engine up there. Same with Lost Judgment. Like, there's... I think I've been gravitating towards the Dragon Engine games for the speedruns way more. And it's not to say the non-Dragon Engine games are bad, because they're not. I think probably when I do it a lot more, I will probably put OG Yakuza 2 into A tier. That's the kind of vibe that I was getting when we first did our first run. I just need to fix my PS3 and try that out more, obviously. But that's my personal opinion on the speedrun Any %. Again, casually, it would be a very different list. That's another YouTube clickbait video for another time, for sure. But I hope you've enjoyed my personal opinion of where the Yakuza games land in terms of tier lists and stuff like that, for the speedruns anyway. There's definitely a lot of controversial ones in this. You could probably interchange like Yakuza 3 and Kiwami. You could probably interchange like Judgment and Lost Judgment, but this is obviously my personal opinion. Obviously, every Yakuza runner is going to have their opinions, and you'll have your opinions from like obviously what you've watched in terms of Yakuza runs. But honestly, this is probably my list. A lot of people ask me what my list is. Fist of the North Star gets its own tier because it's Fist of the North Star, and hopefully this year we'll do Black Panther 1 and 2, obviously. So